Welcome to this panel interview scoring rubric walkthrough. We're going to go through each resiliency element that we score in the panel interview, and we're going to go and talk about it. But also want you to know that not every question in the panel interview is tied to a resiliency element. We will use all the entire panel interview, the questions that were answered, the follow-up questions, all that information that we know about the candidate to be able to score this. Some of them are correlated to each resiliency element, but not necessarily all of them. Um, or not all of them are tied to it to one. So it's not one to one. We'll use maybe the answer to question one several times throughout scoring this panel interview. One of the things for you to know is that we score on 10 resiliency elements, and we're going to go through those. Um, one of the things that I want to say before we get started in scoring is that whatever is said during the panel interview is the information that we take to score this. The recruiter can come in and shine some light, but they cannot speak for their candidate, right? If there's some questions about, like, oh, they talked about a really long travel, do you happen to know where that person lives? Um, and I mean, that shouldn't impact the score. It's just kind of like a data point, maybe for the case manager, whoever's in that panel. Um, but let's get started. So, strategies for overcoming depression is the first resiliency element that we score for. And this is regarding question one. So, is looking at who's the man, is the world fair? Um, as minorities, do we have equal opportunity? Affirmative action and legacy. So that whole question one gets taken into consideration when looking for strategies for overcoming oppression. Also, allowing yourself to look into question two, which is the oppression diagram, right, where we have policy, opportunities, and ambition, and what type of leader do they see themselves, and how did they end up choosing that type of leader, right? There'll be some stories behind that as well. And also looking at their mission. That is question number four. Your personal mission, right? What is that one word? And how all of that ties to strategies for overcoming depression. We're looking, in this, and I'll say this, generationally, we have heard when we ask who's the man and don't give some context behind it, we just let it sit there. A lot of times people won't understand that question. So we have to give it a little bit of background on when that term was used. So who's the man? When you think of the man, in the terms of when people used to say, the man is keeping me down, the man is riding my back, I just can't get ahead. Who is the man in your eyes? Who is the man to you? Like, what does that mean to you? So give it a little bit of context. And at times you'll still get like, I am the man. Um, But as you start peeling that onion with the follow-up questions of, like, is the world fair? Well, no, it's not fair. Let's talk about that. Why isn't it? Um, as minorities, do we have equal opportunities? No, we don't. Our starting line is different for, based on race, at least in this country. Like, they'll be able to start talking about the oppression that they see for themselves and they've experienced. So that'll give you an idea to better score the candidate. So let's pick a number here. Let's go with number three. They're starting to understand and identify who the oppressor is and has begun to think about ways to get involved in addressing the issues surrounding oppression. However, they haven't done any work addressing it. Um, so this is them answering in a way where it's like, no, there's no equal opportunities. Yes, we need affirmative action because we need to, any opportunity that we have in front of us, we should capitalize on that opportunity because opportunities are limited for um, certain groups, minorities, etc. Um, and just kind of leaving it there with not expanding too much into it. Some candidates will be like, and because there's a lack of opportunity, I've been working with my church to make sure that we are filling out that bulletin board with job opportunities for people in my community. That something that indicates that they're taking a step towards fixing um, the issues that they see wrong around them. So it's about taking action or understanding what it is. Um, there's unfortunately times that you hear. No, we all have equal opportunities. There shouldn't be any of affirmative action. Legacy points, why not? If my dad or my grandfather went to that college, like we should be able to get those legacy points. So if you kind of see that, or um, something just kind of blaming the systems, but no solutions thinking, no real strategy for overcoming depression. That's a very low tier two or one, for sure. I hope that shines some light on strategies for overcoming oppression and what we're looking at to be able to understand how they see oppression and how they're combating it. Moving between cultures. This is looking at the is the world fair question, right? It really looks this what we're looking for in moving between cultures is adaptability. How do people move around and adapt? Some will have situations where we talk about moving from country to country, neighborhood to neighborhood, or even what does it look like to live in a neighborhood that does not have a lot of opportunities, but your parents were able to get you an opportunity at a school outside your district. How did you manage moving between cultures? um, or going away to college for some will have limited experience in college and they decided to move, didn't work out for them. What did that look like? Or even just going to community college, going there, if it's far away from your neighborhood, what was that travel like just understanding how people adapt to different areas and different situations too. um, So when we define leadership as making opportunities for others, what opportunities have they helped to make for others, right? Those opportunity making everywhere you go, as you move through life, different situations. When you move between cultures, are you able to adapt, or are you the same person in all situations? Like, how are you able to to be who you need to be to make sure you get the most out of that experience, but also to make sure that people around you are comfortable? So let's pick out number four. They're good at figuring out unwritten rules in various contexts. They don't have many stories of how they adapted while moving between cultures in different contexts, but they're on the way to becoming a five with more time. Um, so what comes to mind here is somebody um, that had to make those moves, whether that was neighborhood, country, or whatnot. But the biggest piece here is they had to read the room. They had to figure out those unwritten rules and adapt to them in a way that made sense for them, but also allowed for opportunity making. Um, if we look at let's see, a one, they're not moving at all between any cultures, which is counter to why anyone would want to be part of i.c.stars. It's very rare to score a one. I can't recall a time where I scored a one, in moving between cultures, but what I can think of is somebody that stayed in the neighborhood, does not want to go out to the neighborhood. They want to keep the same life, which again, that's why it's counter to why wanting to join IC Stars, because you kind of want to expand. You want to move away from, if there's dysfunction, you want to move away from that dysfunction and create a future for yourself and for others around you. So think about that when you're scoring, moving between cultures. Distancing oneself from dysfunction. Here's where we talk about dysfunction. Some people are very open about it. Some people are not, and um, we have to figure out what this function is for them, at least based on what is being shared in the panel interview. Think about the proton, neutron, and electron questions, right? When they talked about the person closest to them in their life, is that, is it a proton and an electron, neutron and electron, electron, proton, whatever it is? How do they interact, right? So do that follow up question of like, talk to me about how you and your brother, you being a proton, him being an electron, like, how do if he's the closest person to you, how does that relationship work? How do you guys get along? How do you guys solve problems together, or solve, the problem that could potentially be happening between you? So get some stories about how they interact with their proton, neutron, and electron, closest person. Try to figure out what this function is for them, and do follow up questions. This is also very beneficial for the case manager to know if the case manager is on the call. Um, it allows us to know. what kind of services or things they might need in place before they even start. Resourcefulness, right? Consider how they use resources to make opportunities for others. Think Robin Hood. So, resourceful does not mean that, oh, they're resourceful. They found out about i.c.stars. They want to change their life. That's not the resourceful story that we're looking for. We can definitely identify how this candidate could be resourceful, but are all these resources to benefit themselves? Or like, oh, I learned about this opportunity and I also shared it with my cousin. I shared it with my brother. Um, I, when for example, a story that comes to mind is, um, my mother is working, she's working at a factory job, but slowly they're giving her some responsibilities in front of a computer. She needs, I know she needs to improve her typing. um, I know that the library is offering courses on the afternoons on Tuesdays. So I need to practice some typing myself. So I'm just going to go and take my mother with me, right? We're going to practice typing together. Um, so that's a resource that they're utilizing to help others around them as well. So let's look at number 4. They are resourceful and have begun ways to act on the work to further their mission, but for now I'm going to learn, volunteer, and engage. That was an example of a 4. Um, let's look at a 5. What would a 5 look like? They've taken actions to leverage their resources, employment training to further help their mission. Um, that's right. Look into how being resourceful and the resources that they've been able to acquire, talk about how do they line up with their mission, their one word, um, and how that lines up. It tells you a lot about the client, the candidate. Um, they've had a hypothesis. Example: a degree for a degree from a for-profit educational institution will help me access better jobs, which will further my social mission. They have researched and mitigated the risk of their hypothesis. So again, yeah, like they want to do something. What resources are in place? Can I go out there and get, and find the resources, utilize those resources, and is that tied to my mission? Um, so that is a 5. Creative thinking. Are they able to come up with with a creative solution? And that creative solution, are they able to collaborate? Collaborate is big here, right? Because we're looking at the Hallmark question. The VP of marketing for Hallmark come up with the next holiday. Um, what is a holiday they're coming up with, right? They'll take some time. Sometimes they'll have a quick thing that they want to go into. Again, make sure that things or try to see how it lines up with their mission. Is it far off? I want to make a party day just for people to go out and party, or is it I want to make a resource day in each community? Whatever that holiday is. I guess what I'm trying to say here is, um, do they need prompting into getting the holiday, making the holiday itself? Um, if so, how much yes ending do they need to really craft this idea of the holiday? And by yes ending, I mean like, I'm passionate about um, dogs, right? Because I want to do something around dogs. Okay, well, what is it that you want to do? I'm not sure. I know there's, certain communities that will have adoption day for dogs. Well, let's think about that, right? Like, people in the communities have dogs and we have to go to a dog park. Why can't we just, make a fun event at the dog park? And then it's like, okay, yes, and let's start, and then they'll start coming up with their own holiday or with their own version of that holiday. Um, then also, can they collaborate with you? So once they're off and going into their holiday and you insert an idea to their holiday, do they receive it or they shut it down? Do they yes and that idea like, oh, that'll be great. Let's do this and follow it up with this. Or is it like, nah, I'm not feeling that. Let me put that to the side for now and let's keep going this way, right? Can they collaborate? Some of the creative pieces that you collect here are also from the Halloween costume, right? Did they make their own Halloween costume? Did they buy it? Um, and what is the reasoning behind like why that being the favorite Halloween costume? Is it because it could have been, there could be a story behind like, oh, this was the only Halloween costume my parents were able to buy me, so we went to the store, we picked it out, and it was really cool. Um, So, but don't disregard that story. But there's also the story of like I had to get crafty and I made all my own holiday, my own Halloween costume. So think about those creative areas, and utilize them towards scoring creative thinking here. Sense of purpose. It kind of like I feel like this is kind of at the core of all the questions, all of the resiliency and rubric, the resiliency points that we're scoring here. Um, because in a way, once you look at the candidate at the end, things will kind of make sense if they're aligned with their sense of purpose. Um, think about that mission question, right? The one word, it should be a verb. What is that word? Someone's like, well, this word, can I talk a little bit more about that? Or they'll leave it there. So you have to ask, can you expand on why is your mission to energize, to support, to help? Um, and that's okay. We'll give them the opportunity to expand on that, but make sure you follow up with, so your mission is to help. Why were you placed on this planet? Right? To do that follow up so you can expand even more into how they got to that one word. Um, it's important to have those two questions there because it allows you for more storytelling and to understand the candidate better. There'll be two, right? So if that person scores a two, is because they're like, oh, my mission is to succeed, to win. Um, no stories that make it real, right? So when you ask, what is your purpose? Not what is your purpose? Yes, why were you placed on this planet? It's like, I was here to succeed because I want to make sure I make all the money I can. Um, and even if it's making all the money they can, like, did they even talk about how that will impact others around them, or is it just centered around themselves, right? So think about that. Sometimes they take longer to want to figure out what that one word is, and that's okay. Feel free to expand on um, what a verb is, right? Or how to preface that answer of like, your mission is to action word, right? To help them understand. Sometimes, they'll get confused, like, what is a verb? Like, what is it that you're looking for? So, feel free to throw in those in there, but make sure you get that one word. And not necessarily because they said it within 5 seconds means that they get a five, right? They can right away say, my mission in this world is to win. All I want to do is win, 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 no matter what. Um, but because they said it within 5 seconds, that doesn't mean it gets them a five, right? They have to elaborate on that. What does that mean? What does that mean to them? How does that impact others? So think about that mission statement, that mission question that way. Instance of purpose. Responsiveness. This is not how they respond to your questions. It's about how they have responded to situations. Something happens, the person does something. Did they take action? What action did they take? Are they making things better? So this applies across the entire panel interview, where they are telling you a story of something that happened and how did they respond to that? How did they respond to certain challenges? Um, Number four is like, did they have one really good story about challenging the status quo? Or are they just talking about what's wrong in their life and there's no solution to it? Right? Are they responding with some sort of resiliency? I guess this is where we're looking at a piece of resilience, right? How did they solve their problems? How did they get through obstacles that life throws at them? So that's how you look at responsiveness. Now we go on to communication skills, right? Which is, how do they answer questions? This is how they're interacting with you. Did they provide stories, or did you have to, ask a lot of follow-up and clarifying questions? Um, can they elaborate when you ask, like, oh, we'll talk a little bit more about that? Um, it's rare, but you will sometimes get those one word answers, and you have to constantly keep asking to elaborate. And if they don't get the hint of, like, this is a time where you need to tell us and open up, it's going to be really hard to score throughout. You won't have enough information. Um, but a good storyteller, being able to bridge i.c.stars, like how i.c.stars is going to impact my life because this is where I'm going. Before I came to this interview a month ago, I was working at Amazon, and it was not the ideal place to work in. I'm at a point in my life where college is not an option for me, so I just started looking up for some research, some programs that can assist me in building a career. And actually, I found i.c.stars. That's why I'm here. My goal is to be, you know, a project manager and front end developer by 2025, whatever that is, right? You're able to see a timeline of events when they're talking about IC stars and bridging that into their lives and in other stories, right? We just expect them to, or not expect them, we want to help them get to the point where they're comfortable enough to be able to share stories with us, right? So this is communication skills, either short answers or stories, like where are we and how do we help them get there. Sense of humor, we're not looking for super funny people, but we definitely want them to have objectivity about self. um, Sense of humor is another indicator of objectivity, and objectivity is critical in the community leadership. It means that someone can step away from an issue and see it in its entirety, not just the moment when the emotions are high. And that is correct, right? At times questions stomp our candidates, and at times they'll crack a joke or they'll just laugh because they've never been asked those questions. So how can they step away from the situation and see the entire picture and be able to joke about it, make fun of themselves, and it happens. Sometimes we'll get comments about the application process or the weird panel interview. So look for those pieces of humor. Um, Whenever there's laughter, I definitely jot it down on my notes, and why was there laughter, right? Because I do want to know the points of the interview that brought some laughter, some humor to things. All right, so let's go on to ability to plan. So this is towards the end, right? We definitely go right into asking the question of, have you made any arrangements or how have you planned to be okay with the stipend? Um, And here's where some of these people are a little bit shy and protective. They don't want to disclose their financial situation. A lot of the times our people are employed, so they're like, "Oh, it's more than I'm making now, so it should be better if I'm not making any money now." It's like, yes, but how do you keep that up for 16 weeks, right? We want to make sure, a five, we've heard of five before where it's like, oh, I know I'm making X amount of money. I know, this portion is going towards travel. I'm going to be taking the train and a bus. So I know that I'm going to need to get a monthly pass. This is going for my cell phone bill. And I've gotten my sister to sponsor me throughout the 16 weeks with rent, right? I live with my sister, and she said, "Don't worry about rent. If you go through this program, I'll support you." Um, so like really having a detailed plan, like to the dollar, like where everything is going. That's a five. But also they'll talk about, I'm gonna Uber on the weekends, and then we have to shine some light on like, great, Ubering is a good gig, I guess, that you can do on the weekend, but at times that might not be true. You might not have that time on the weekend because you're trying to make sure that your application works. You're learning new skills. So if you weren't able to Uber, how do you go around that? Um, it's like, oh well, I know that the program starts in 3 weeks. That gives me just enough time to make X amount, and I know if I make this amount, I should be okay because that's gonna help cover the last month of rent or whatever that is. Um, so make sure you do some follow-up questions there when they talk about like, oh, it's more than I'm making now, it's gonna be okay. Or I'm not worried about that. If that's the answer, I'm not worried about the stipend. Actually, I could do this without a stipend. That could potentially be a red flag. You might want to look into why that is. Um, this also allows the case manager to understand kind of where they're at and what type of services they potentially might need down the road. Um, so it's important that that you address ability to plan. Sorry about that. So now there's a quick quiz. So these are all the resiliency elements that we're scoring on during a panel interview, and a quick quiz for you, right? Um, the quiz is this quick question here: how many resiliency elements do we score in the panel interview rubric? I just went through all of them, and I named the number up front in this recording. If you don't remember, that's okay. You will now know going forward that we score on 10, yes, it's 10 resiliency elements throughout this panel interview rubric. And here they are: strategies for overcoming oppression, moving between cultures, distancing oneself from dysfunction, resourcefulness, creative thinking, sense of purpose, responsiveness, communication skills, sense of humor, I'm sorry, and ability to plan. And as the last slide here that I want to share with you is, if you have not seen this before, it's the i.c.stars DNA. An i.c.stars candidate should have all of these traits in some sort of way or another. Some more developed than others. Empathy, right? We talk about moving between cultures, being able to be in somebody else's, being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and understand their journey. Innovation. We're in a place where technology changes often. So how do they deal with change? Are they out of the box thinkers? Can they innovate? Can they put themselves in a place that it's a little weird and we might not know what's going on, but how do they respond to that? Right? How can you get creative in times of, for example, the Hallmark question? Like all of a sudden, I was working at McDonald's 3 hours ago, and now you're telling me I'm the VP of marketing for Hallmark. And I'm supposed to come up with solutions? That's innovation, right? And with that being said, right across from it is adaptability, right? How do you adapt in different scenarios, different situations, um, moving between cultures? Once again, we talk about the perfect, or one of the traits of an ideal IC Stars candidate. It's somebody that we feel inspired by and not feel sorry for, right? So inspiration is big, and reciprocity. We're a culture of gift giving, right? So throughout that interview, what gifts did you see that candidate deliver or talk about in his experience? Um, and then obviously resiliency, right across from it. And I think that's something that we talk a lot about. Like, our candidates are resilient, so resilient are resilient. So how did they show that resiliency throughout this panel interview? Think about that. Think about the IC Stars DNA. Um, and I think you will do just fine. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can always reach me at cromero at i.c.stars.org, or over Microsoft Teams. A quick chat will do. Same, Chris Romero, Christian Romero, C Romero at IC Stars. Thank you.